everybody, I'd like to welcome you all to the event today. We're going to get started now. So this is the last actually research talk of the Univirtual Experience 2022 for the VR research team. So welcome to that event. If you're not aware, the Univirtual Experience has been going on for the last 3 days, I guess now. This is the third day. The last 2 days have been full of various research talks on everything from nature therapy to what we're doing today, which is applications of the use of virtual reality for doing job interviews. The medical team has presented. We've had lots of different presentations. It's been fantastic. If you missed it, hey, sorry, but you can check it all out on the Educators in VR YouTube channel once all the videos are processed and posted up there, so you can check that out. I encourage you to do so. Just to give you some context, so this is an Educators in VR event. So Educators in VR is a broader group that has over 20 different teams, and those teams specialize in the application and the usage of VR and XR technologies into both education, and it's expanded into this wide range of things that Educators in VR has gotten involved with now. So it's a huge group of people, thousands of people around the planet that are involved now. So today's talk is going to be by Rebecca Chu. And Rebecca is a recent graduate of a master's degree in educational science and technology at the University of Twente. Her work focuses on incorporating technology into education and using digital tools to help people learn. So Rebecca, I will hand the floor over to you. Have a good talk.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction, Anthony. Hello everyone, my name is Rebecca Chu, and it's really nice to see all of you here. Can everybody hear me well? If you can hear me fine, please give me some emojis. Awesome. All right, so as Anthony mentioned, I recently finished my master thesis research at the University of Twente, where I study educational science and technology. And my research was about developing a VR assessment of orderliness and also exploring the effect of environmental orderliness in VR. Now, I think most of you have heard of using VR to assess job applicants' certain skills in different scenarios, especially in this post-COVID era where remote hiring and remote onboarding are on the rise. I think there has been an increase in the discussion about using VR in the process. Can you give me some emojis if you have read or heard any information about this, whether it's an article, a video, a LinkedIn post, or yeah, anything. Okay, cool. So a couple of people, that's great. So as you can imagine, this approach really comes with a lot of benefits, I think. It provides candidates with the chance to demonstrate their abilities that traditional assessment methods not really reflect. And it also offers companies with a more realistic impression of someone's behaviors and how they will react in various professional contexts. For this research, I was working with the company Serious VR. They're based in the Netherlands, and they're a company that develops and produces VR trainings for various industries. And what we wanted to do to investigate the potential of using VR assessment in the employee selection process, we believe that VR assessment is the future of hiring. And I know that is a very big question that not a single research can answer. So in the study, we focus on one competency only, and that is orderliness. It might not be the most common attribute that you see on a resume, but it's something that especially the logistics industry is interested in. And the reason is very simple. They need workers who are orderly and good at organizing materials, because if you're a warehouse worker and you're not orderly and products go missing, that will lead to a direct loss of the company. So we know for a fact that they demand people who are orderly, but in the current employee selection process, there is a lack of assessment of someone's orderliness that is valid, reliable, and even objective. So let's look at the start of the show, the attribute orderliness and how we define it. And so it is one of the 6 facets under the Big 5 personality trait conscientiousness. You might have heard of it. There are different conceptualizations out there of orderliness, but in this study, the working definition is that orderliness is related to tidiness, keeping things organized, and a preference for order. And in practice and in research, the most commonly used method to assess orderliness is the self-reported method, as known as the questionnaires and the surveys. I'm sure everybody have done it. And there's no denying that it has many advantages. It's cheap, it's quick, the data is easy to analyze, but there is a big problem, is that people sometimes don't tell the truth about themselves. Now here comes the question, and I'm asking you to be honest here. How many of you have applied on a marketing survey, either knowingly or unknowingly? Give me some emojis. Perhaps a customer satisfaction survey or a very annoying survey ad on YouTube just before your favorite video. Those are the words, right? Okay, so we have a couple of people. I think we have a very respectable group here. It's not everybody raise their hands. Well, thank you so much for your honesty. And so imagine if some people are lying in the low stakes survey already, then what happens when the stakes are high and the survey is actually related to their future career? So this is why self-reported measures often suffer from validity issues, because candidates might want the job so much that they over-exaggerate their good attributes and hide the bad ones, or they're simply incapable of conducting an honest evaluation of themselves. Another limitation of self-report is that it disregards the influence of environmental factors on how we behave. And that's because the questions in the surveys are usually very general and broad, because it's only interested in someone's behavioral tendency over time. And we know for a fact that behaviors are affected by so many factors. For example, the specific situation you're in and your surroundings. So if you ask me now, do you think you're orderly? My answer is always, depends. Perhaps I behave in an orderly manner only when I think it's my responsibility to clean up or when I'm at work. So you can see that this lack of specific context really makes it challenging to use questionnaires or surveys to judge one's orderliness. As I mentioned, the environmental factors are also important in behaviors. And research has shown that environmental orderliness, which is the level of tidiness of an environment, since these 3 types of actions are all related to orderliness, specifically the cleaning behaviors, return behaviors, and even task accuracy. They are they might also be influenced. So it is very important that we take environmental orderliness into account when we develop an assessment of orderliness. The current measures have all these challenges. So what is the alternative? That's where my research comes in. So my research proposes that virtual self-assessment as a potential option, which is just a self-assessment conducted in virtual. Let's look at them one by one. Let's start with self-assessment. So assessments, to put it simply, it's a type of embedded assessment in a game which evaluates one's competencies or skills by measuring their in-game behaviors and actions. Now, an important feature in self-assessment is that the players are usually not aware of the target competency being assessed. And sometimes they don't even know that they're being assessed at all. This reduces test anxiety and counters the limitations of self-reported measures, because if you don't know what is being assessed, it's very difficult for you to do, right? And virtual reality, on the other hand, when we use VR as an assessment vehicle, it can provide a natural, realistic, simulated environment that allows for full experimental control. We're also able to collect a large amount of behavioral data that allows us to make more inferences, and we can use VR to create environments with different variations. Now, this is especially beneficial because it allows us to build environments with different levels of orderliness and study if it has any impact on orderly behaviors in VR. So, research aim to develop a virtual self-assessment on orderliness and then see if there's any correlation between this measurement and existing measure. In other words, we're wondering how orderly behaviors in virtual self-assessments relate to self-reported orderliness, and how environmental orderliness affects this relation. To achieve this, we developed and embedded the virtual self-assessment in an order-picking training application based on the evidence-centered model. Started with defining the competency of interest, which in this case is orderliness, right? And then we determined the features of the task environment. For instance, we have a dashboard that provides an overview of all the mistakes and correct actions someone makes in the assessment. And lastly, we take the actions and convert them into observable variables. They are what we call the evidence we have, make inferences from orderliness, hence the evidence model. No, it sounds a bit vague, so let's look at one example. So for instance, we have 3 kinds of trash as prompts in the assessment. We have paper ball that falls to the ground when the participant grabs the box from the shelf. And we also have a broken cardboard and a broken tape on the conveyor in front of their working area. So you can react to the trash in whichever way you want, as in real life. You can put it in the trash can, you can leave it there, you can pick it up, look at it for 3 seconds, and then throw it on the ground again. Trust me, people have actually done that, and I was pretty amazed to see that. So basically, whatever you want to do with them, okay? And based on your reactions, we turn them into data and make inferences of your orderliness. And in addition, to explore the effect of environmental orderliness, we also developed 2 different VR environments, and you can see the one on the left here. That is the tidy warehouse with clean and bright walls and no trash on the floor. And the messy one on the right, it is filled with dirt and trash on the ground, and it's visibly dirty, right? And the walls or pillars are dark as well. So after the experiment, after the development phase, we moved on to the experiment, and I recruited 50 participants, and the experiment started with them completing a survey on their orderliness, and then they went through the order picking training, which has instructions, scenario, and assessment phases. In the assessment phase, each participant goes through both environments. Afterwards, they completed a survey reporting the messy or tidy features they noticed in the assessment, and that concluded the experiment. So, our findings are really interesting. There is a significant correlation between orderly performance and self-reported orderliness in the tidy and the messy environment. In addition, there is also a significant correlation between orderly performance of highly orderly people and their self-reported orderliness in the tidy environment. And it also seems that there is an interaction effect between environmental orderliness and self-reported orderliness, but it is not really significant. So here is the interaction plot, and as you can see, the plot looks like for highly orderly people. I hope you can read the words. So for the highly orderly people, the line on the the green one, the green line, yeah, the green line represents the highly ordered people, and the blue line represents the low ordered people. So there is a bigger difference in their performance in different environments than low orderly people or high orderly people. In other words, low orderly people seem less affected by the environment. That was the result that we got. So what does that mean? The correlation suggests that the more orderly someone said was, more orderly behaviors they demonstrated in the assessment. And it also shows that compatible virtual environment, so a clean warehouse in this case, was able to elicit behaviors that are more consistent with highly orderly people's orderliness than incompatible one. There is no significant difference for low orderly people. Now, this could be because highly orderly individuals, they felt more comfortable in the tidy environment, and therefore they reacted more in line with their nature, according to the person organization theory. And for low orderly people, however, perhaps being in the tidy environment did not cause them much discomfort. So there's no significant difference between the actual behaviors and the perceived orderliness in different conditions. During this study, I found the advantages virtual assessments have over sports. For example, it can be assumed that because VR can create highly realistic environment for assessment, it can lead to higher ecological validity, and that means the results might be more generalizable to real life. And it is also more resistant to social desirability bias because it is a type of self-assessment and people usually didn't know what was being assessed. And also, according to some participants, they felt less observed when they were immersed in virtual environment. So they're more likely to give genuine responses. I also think that virtual assessments are more suitable for workers who are not used to or unable to do long-time reading and self-evaluation because it does not require them to answer any questions. Lastly, I do want to stress that this is only a preliminary explorative research, and although the correlations were significant, the relationships were not very, very strong. So please take the findings with a grain of salt. As to why that is the case, I have some interesting theories about that, and that's something we can discuss later. That being said, the study still shows that VR assessments can be a promising measurement tool that has great potential. In addition, there are many factors that could influence behaviors and performance in VR. So, my suggestion is that when you analyze the VR performance, it is best to also have qualitative data on the reason why they behaved the way they did to get the full picture. And I would like to the findings of this study present an opportunity for further investigation on its ability, and more research are on to see what competencies we can measure in different education. And with more research being conducted on VR assessment, we will have more clarity on what we can achieve with this tool. So that is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening. I'm going to ask the moderator to turn on the hand raising function for you guys so you can let me know if you have any questions.
So we'll turn on that in just a second, but first let's give Rebecca a whole collection of emojis, show her how great her talk was. Thank you, Rebecca. It was excellent.
I feel loved. Yes.
Excellent. It's good to feel loved.
Yep.
So what I'm going to do now for everyone in the audience is I'm going to turn on the raise hands tool, and that is going to allow you to click on a button in the lower right-hand corner that should just come available for you. And once that is available, if you click on that, it will put you on a speakers list, and then we can have you give you the megaphone so that you can ask questions easily to Rebecca. So feel free to jump into that list at any time. Rebecca, I can ask you.
Clear that nobody has any questions. Okay, go ahead.
You are so good at explaining things that nobody has any questions.
I don't think that's the case, though.
I do have a quick question. There's actually some people on the list coming up now. But before we jump to that, I'll ask you a quick question. How much do you see this kind of approach to interviewing and assessing people, not yours specifically, but even in the broader sense of how common do you think VR interviews is going to become?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I mean, with every emerging technology, you have to be mindful of what it can do and what it cannot do, and you have to make sure that you don't exactly the benefit of the tool. And I really think that peer assessments should not be employed as the only source of evaluation in high-risk assessment, rather a supplementary and additional tool that provides additional information. Because in the experiments, I saw so many different factors that can affect your performance in VR, and I think if they are used inappropriately in the selection process, it might lead to the wrong hiring decision.
Right.
And I really think if companies would like to use VR assessments in the process, as I said, like quantitative data should also be collected to gain a better understanding of their behaviors in VR. And this could be implemented within additional survey or after performance interviews. Perhaps the interviewers can watch back their performance with the applicant and then use perhaps a video stimulated recall method to discuss their reported behaviors. But overall, I can see it being implemented in the future because it has been implemented as well. To my knowledge, a lot of companies have tried to do that. I don't see it as a replacement on traditional assessment method. I can see it being part of the selection process. Answer your question?
Yeah, very much so. It's interesting, right? Because on one hand, as academics, we tend to say what you and I were talking about before the event. We were talking about the idea that, it'd be good to collect all the science and the data on this first before people implemented it. But we also know that's not necessarily how corporations have a tendency to work, right? They tendency to just jump in and use it and then figure it out later. So cool. Thank you. First person on the speakers list is Nicole. So Nicole, I'm going to pass you the megaphone and you have to accept it, and then we should be able to hear you.
I actually have a couple questions. I find this very interesting.
Perfect.
So the first question would be, did the company that you partnered with use the information to help with any employee training?
I can answer that question first. No, as of now, at least to my knowledge, they haven't done that. Um, the participants that I recruited for this research was their research purpose only, and I recruited students from the university. So we didn't really do anything with the data just for research purpose. Right? And as for using this application to really assess people's orderliness and really implement it in the process, I do think they're working on it, but I am not really sure if they are gonna fully use it. Because as I mentioned, after analyzing all the data, the correlations are significant, but we do have a very weak relationship that was quite weak, that we really didn't think that we can really assess someone's orderliness with this particular application. But maybe in future research, where researchers can look into this, and with their help, with their like innovative methods, maybe we can find stronger relationships between the two measures. But as of now, as I said, it's an explorative research, and I don't think this application is ready to be used in the real process.
Okay. Okay. And then the second question I have is for the folks who self-assessed as highly orderly, did you notice in the messy environment, was there a pattern in how they went about tidying that area? Did they start like, let me sweep the floors first and then move smaller, or did they start smaller and move bigger, or was that not tracked?
Could you clarify what you meant in your last sentence? Like when they started with the small areas and moved down to the big ones?
Right. When you had that people in the messy environment that considered themselves highly orderly, is there any pattern that developed as to how they tried to make it a much more orderly environment?
Oh, yeah, you know what? I do believe highly orderly people, or at least the people who claim that they're highly orderly in the self-reported survey, we did notice a certain pattern when they're in VR. Specifically, they picked up actually more trash than low orderly people, and they also I think they noticed more messiness in the messy warehouse. And I think that was the two patterns that we noticed. And it was very interesting because although that's the pattern that we realized, there are a lot of exceptions out there. So there are people who claim that they're highly orderly, but they did not pick up any single trash in the environment. And I was so curious about the reason behind their actions. I always conduct a little post experiment interview, and it's really a shame to think about it now, because I didn't do a mixed method research. I was only doing a quantitative research. But the reasons that I got from them were astounding. Like some people were like, "Oh, I don't think it's my responsibility to clean up the working area. So although I think I'm highly orderly, I'm not gonna do that." Like reasons that are so not ridiculous. I think they're very interesting. It really they truly represent like what orderliness is, more so than the data that we collected. It's quite interesting.
Okay. Yeah. I find myself personally, I vacillate between being highly orderly and not orderly at all. But in my depending on my schedule and the amount of classes and where everything winds up right throughout the day. But I find that there is order to my disorder as well. However, it becomes overwhelming, and I have to start small, focus task, and get more generalized some days. And other days, I look at my classroom environment with my students, and I have to start bigger and work towards very specific areas. So I'm in between. I'm a walking contradiction, I guess.
Well, I guess everybody is a walking contradiction, so no worries about that. Yeah, I think people have their own set of priorities when it comes to cleaning, and yeah, maybe in the future we can develop another VR application that really focuses on that. But in this assessment, we didn't really take that into consideration, because that wasn't a part of the definition that we found for orderliness. Or, I mean, it was a bit difficult to implement that when we developed these. Thank you for your question. Is there another one?
Thank you, Nicole. Good, very good questions. Such an interesting discussion. The next person actually on our speakers list is Laurel. So Laurel, I will hand you the megaphone.
Thank you. So excited.
Hey, Laurel.
I don't want to inundate you because I have 1,000 questions, but I want to kind of play devil's advocate. And what you've done is demonstrated that we have the ability to measure assessments in VR for obviously cleanliness, orderliness, and maintaining the safety and protection and features and things that are important. But what, from your research, what do you think VR cannot measure when it comes to job assessments?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very good question. I think well, I really do think things like ecological attributes. I know there are a lot of research that are working on it, but I don't know, things like really interaction with other people, or perhaps recognizing other people's emotions and deal with them. I know people are trying to that, but unless the technology is so developed that we have like a facial recognition feature in VR, I'm not sure if there is. If there is, let me know.
Yeah, there is. Yes, there is.
There is? Oh, great.
Mm-hmm. We just had a presentation.
Then I answered my own question.
Where were you?
That's awesome.
Sorry, I'm teasing.
Maybe I was sleeping. Yeah, but yeah, then there is then that is definitely possible to do that. But I was just thinking about like without the facial recognition feature, I don't think you can really recognize the actual emotions of the people that you're interacting in VR, and perhaps that is a bit difficult to measure in an emotional. And another thing that I just thought of is that you cannot really assess any skills or competencies that are related to really interacting with the objects, because, I mean, objects in VR, sometimes they're interactable, but it's not the same thing. You don't feel the same weight, and you don't feel that it's really occupying a space in real life. And it's not in the same way as how we see it in real life. You don't really feel it. And I say that because in my experiment, I also noticed that a lot of those obvious environmental features that we placed in the messy warehouse or in the tidy warehouse, a lot of them went unnoticed when we asked the participants, oh, what what did you notice in the warehouse? What did you notice in the assessment phase? A lot of people were like, I did not notice anything. And I mean, that can be explained by other theories. Perhaps they were too focused on their own task so that they then have the cognitive ability to notice their surroundings and their environment. But I really think our eyes, our vision, our perspective in VR are really, really different from what we have in real life. And I think definitely more research is needed to look into this. But things like perceptions and objects and interacting with objects, I think those are the things that, well, don't, I hope there is a way to really investigate it, and hopefully one day we can combine it with objects in real life so that we can make more sense of it. But things like this, I think that's a challenge in terms of assessments.
I think that's wonderful. Which you answered my second question, and I love that. It's a fantastic thing. But you answered my second question, which I teach my web development and design years ago that details matter, and if you're looking for a job and you want to hold on to that job, details are going to bite you back if you miss them. And that's something that this evaluation really looks at, is how much they pay attention to those details, because details, especially in some serious jobs, get you killed if you miss them. You know, designing a web, designing an entire website or web server database or something like that, that's not going to kill you, but it can, get you fired. But okay, so that answered my second question, which is beautiful. Thank you. And then
Awesome.
Yay, the behavioral aspect of this is fascinating, of having people interact with this in a way that you can collect this information and make these evaluations on it. But how does this relate to people who are new to VR, experienced in VR? Did you mix that experience in?
Yeah, I think most of my participants, they have had no previous experience with VR. And of course that presents a challenge, which is that if you're not familiar with VR, you don't really know how it works when the first time you don't know if objects are interactable, you don't know if you can touch it, how far you can go. So we always have like a introduction phase before the actual experiment where I explained how everything worked, how far you can walk, and there's a zone when you cannot cross it, otherwise you'll hit the box or something. And in the introduction, I also make it clear that if you see mess, you are free to clean it up. And I didn't want to make it sound obvious that they are encouraged to clean up the mess, because that's not what we're trying to do. What we wanted to do was to make sure they know if there's a trash, if there's a piece of trash anywhere, there's a chance. I mean, you can try it yourself. You don't have to. You're free to do that. It's not going to influence your performance in whatever way, but you're free to clean it up, and you're free to interact with objects. And a lot of them really took that by heart, because I saw a few people who were just like, really, one participant told me that she was borderline OCD. And I noticed in the experiment was that she was frantically trying to organize the very unorganized boxes that were not interactive. The point that I had to kind of say, oh, these are not interactable, so maybe try another way. So that was very interesting to see. But we made sure that all the participants know they have a chance to tweak the things, and So if you remember in the last slide, I can play it again. If you notice that on the left picture, there's a paper ball on the product, right? We also have the trash can on the floor, which is filled with the same paper ball. So that we're trying to tell them intuitively that that's something that you can throw to the trash can. It doesn't really belong there, because people might think, oh, maybe it's a piece of important information that is reserved for somebody else, so I might as well just ignore it and keep it there. So we're trying to tell them, oh, it's a piece of trash, you can throw it away, and it's safe for you to do that.
So part of your study was leading people, and yes, it does, but part of your study was leading people and part of it was not. So that's a really fine line to walk. Really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because we have to tell them something, otherwise we really fear that they will not react to the trashing anyway, but we also don't want to encourage them to do that, because I would defeat the purpose of this experiment. We want them to act in their most genuine and natural way possible, so that we can make correlation playing orderliness. So yeah, as you said, it's really a fine line, and I heard that I don't feel any hints though that we're trying to assess their orderliness, which is quite challenging, and it's also very fun to see their faces when I'm debriefing them after the experiment. Like I would always say, oh, like, what do you think we were assessing? And they were like, oh, maybe like how many trash I noticing the environment. It's partly true, because we're also assessing that, but it's not orderliness. And then I will explain what we were assessing, and they would be like, oh, I didn't really think that was related. But you can really tell whether someone is orderliness or not with this kind of setup, because we're not telling them to clean up and they clean up themselves. They have to, but they did. So that means they're orderly.
Now, what's next? That's my last question. What's next for you in this research?
I think there are a lot of future directions that we can go with this. As I said, I think virtual self-assessments have a lot of potential, and a lot of, I think further research is definitely needed to look into other competencies and skills that we can measure. For example, spatial reasoning is the skill to understand and manipulate the relations among objects. It's also the top indicator of success of STEM education, I think. It's very important for engineers and architects, and with VR, you really can redefine how we measure spatial reasoning in the environment, because I believe the current practice is paper and pencil tests, and it's not really assessing what we want to assess. So that's one. And the other thing is, of course, we can look into orderliness aspect, and we can try to do more experiments about it. So perhaps we can compare the orderliness performance in VR and then track the orderliness behaviors in real life over time, 360-degree feedback, because, I mean, observations in real life are really difficult to do. I think maybe that will give us more intel on whether these correlations actually exist. What I wanted to say is that the weak relationship that we found in this study, I think it mostly can be attributed to the inherent differences between the two measures, because the VR assessment is basically a performance-based test, and trying to compare it with paper pencil test, I mean, that's apples and oranges. It's not really comparable, hence the really low correlation. But if we can find another performance-based test in real life and then compare the results with behavior, I think we would have extraordinary results. But it's just that real life observations, it's really difficult to achieve without environmental control. A lot of things can go wrong. So if we can look into that, that would be another direction. Make sense?
Okay, excellent.
Hey.
Thank you. And Rel stole my last question because I was going to ask the same one about where it was going to go in the future.
Yeah.
Interesting. Like, it's funny, Rel, you made that comment about how walking the fine line between providing some information, but not providing so much information that you bias your participants. And the only thought that went through my head was like, welcome to psychology research. Like, this is something we have to walk the line with this kind of stuff all the time, because you don't want to bias your participants, but you have to give them some information about what they have to do. So it's always a balancing act. Yeah. So
Totally,
just a reminder, last call for anyone who might want to add their name to the raise hands list. So I'll just leave that up for a moment more. If there's anybody else. George in 3D has added his name to the list. George, I will hand you the megaphone.
Yeah, thank you. I find this kind of confusing because I can function in either environment, and when I'm, for example, hired as a technician to do a particular job, if I say, well, this place is messy and I'm going to start sweeping the floor, well, I'm not hired to sweep the floor. I'm hired to do the job that I'm there for. So I think this is kind of confusing because it depends on, you know, what is expected of the person. So I would first require information about what am I expected to do.
Yeah, definitely. I totally understand. And as I said, this application was designed and developed for order pickers. And from the logistics industry's point of view, they really want someone that is responsible for the cleanliness of the environment. So they want everybody to, when they see a piece of trash on the ground, they have to pick it up, then put it in the trash can. And of course, maybe other professions don't require that high level of orderliness. But in this case, they really value this attribute, because in the warehouse, it's really important that you keep the environment really clean and tidy. And as you probably know, any sign of disorder is sometimes an encouragement of further disorder. So when you see a piece of trash on the ground and nobody picks it up, perhaps maybe a day later it would become like a garbage ground, because everybody would just throw trash everywhere. Of course, I'm exaggerating, but you can see that if one is not orderly and you place him in a orderly environment, that could pose a risk or a challenge to maintaining the orderliness of the environment. It really depends on the profession, and because we're designing this application for the logistics industry, for order pickers only, so that's why we value this attribute. Make sense?
Yes, thank you. Because up until now, my definition of orderliness was to put things back where I got them from. Whether I'm in either environment, if I use something, I put it back exactly where it was. But this is very interesting. Yes. Thank you.
Totally. I just want to add that that's also something that we assess. I didn't mention it earlier, but but putting things back to where they belong was also one of the criterion that we use in the assessment. So, for example, we as you can see in the left picture, the participant is holding a, what do you call that? It's a barcode. It's a scanner. Sorry, it's a scanner. Yes. So he's picking up the scanner from a desk, and we will actually measure when they are done with the scanning of the product, whether he would put that scanner back to the original location or not, or he just put it anywhere else on the desk. So that's something that we also measure. as I said, the definitions of orderliness is very diverse, and we're only using one definition, which we categorize them into three components. One is tidiness. The second thing is keeping things organized, so meaning where they belong, and the third one is their preference for order. So how well they listen to the instructions and how well they follow the order. That I just didn't really mention it. Thank you for the question. That brought up an interesting thing that I wanted to.
Excellent.
Thank you, George.
Another good question. So this is kind of bringing us near to the end of the event. So first of all, I would like to, for all of us, to give Rebecca a round of emojis. Thank her for an excellent talk and an excellent discussion. Well done, Rebecca. Very interesting topic. Everything in this whole Univirtual.
Thank you so much.
Each one of these you go to, they're just so interesting. All the different things people are doing in VR is just fascinating. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming out to today's event. I'm not sure, Rebecca will probably be here for 4 minutes, as a few other people. We do have a social event coming up that starts in just a few minutes. So I encourage you to join us there. And that is basically all I have for today. So again, Rebecca, thank you very much for today's presentation. And everybody have a good day. And hopefully I'll see you at the reception in a little bit.
Thank you everyone so much for coming. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a nice day wherever you are. Morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you all. It's good morning. But yeah. So,
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
bye.